Welcome to Dadograms. I'm Jason and Garrett, and as we just celebrated Flag Day, and as we approach the 4th of July, I want to talk about something that we've quietly let fade. The Pledge of Allegiance. Odds are you haven't thought much about it since middle school. Back then, you probably recited it every morning, hand over your heart, eyes on the flag, without even asking why. But here's the real question. What happens to a nation when we stop saying the pledge? Because the pledge isn't just words, it's foundation work. It's a shared agreement between millions of Americans reaffirming a commitment to each other and our country. And it matters. When I joined the Navy as a midshipman in the early 1990s, one of the first things they told me really stuck with me. They said that most of us coming into the Navy had no shared moral foundation, no common compass. And as I got to know some of the midshipmen in the room with me, I realized they were right. We were from all over the place. Rural farms, inner cities, suburbs, broken homes, wealthy families, and we had very different beliefs on, just about everything regarding ethics, morals, and the differences between right and wrong. So in order for us to have a solid shared foundation, the Navy gave us 3 core values. They were honor, courage, and commitment. And they weren't just words. They were a code, a foundation we could build on. Because realistically, you can't trust your life to the guy next to you unless you both share the same core values. But here's the sobering truth I found out. The Navy had to invent that moral framework because America's culture stopped passing one down. That's exactly why something like the Pledge of Allegiance came into existence in the first place, and why it still matters to all of us now. It's not about forcing patriotism, it's about establishing common ground. Now, for those of you who don't know how the pledge came into existence, it was not created by Congress. It was written in 1892 by a former Union Army chaplain named Francis Bellamy. Why? Because just 30 years after the Civil War, we were still divided, still fragile. He wanted to give school children a common identity, a verbal anchor they could all say together, regardless of their background. He was creating a solid shared foundation we could all stand upon and build upon. And the words "under God," they didn't come from him, even though he was a chaplain. Those were added in 1954 during the Cold War by Congress and President Eisenhower to draw a clear line between our free faith-rooted democracy and the godless communism promoted by the Soviet Union. The few times the pledge has ever changed, it was in response to a perceived national crisis. It was a cultural recalibration, a way to unify a people that potentially were starting to drift apart. And today? Well, thankfully, they still say it every day in my kids' grade school and high school, and I'm thankful that they still do. But in many places, it's become kind of a weekly or just special occasions type of event. Sometimes it's optional. Others just quietly ignore it. And I bet very few parents take the time to really explain the importance to their kids. Do you? Too many kids grow up not understanding the importance of the pledge. Some older folks even suggest that it's old-fashioned, something that we don't need to waste our time with. It's just a performative ritual. But that's kind of like saying that just brushing your teeth is just for show, right? Daily rituals matter. They form habits, and habits shape identity, especially in the young, while the foundation is still being laid. You've probably heard the quote, "A house divided amongst itself cannot stand." That was Abraham Lincoln, but most of you probably don't know the context. He wasn't just talking about war, the Civil War. He was warning about something even more dangerous, a moral divide. See, in his time, half the country believed slavery was wrong, fundamentally evil. The other half believed it was their right and their economic necessity. This wasn't just a disagreement, it was a fracture, a divide, 2 Americas with a great chasm between them. And Lincoln knew that the real threat wasn't the argument, it was the loss of shared values. He understood you can't run a country if the people no longer agree on what's right and what's wrong. That's why the Pledge of Allegiance matters. Not because it erases differences, but because it reminds us every day that there are still things that we all stand for. Freedom, justice, unity, responsibility. They aren't political positions. They're foundations. Without them, we stop being a country. and we just become a group of strangers arguing on the internet. If we don't help kids anchor their identity into something solid, the world will hand them something to anchor to, and they're going to get it from TikTok, shock humor, influencers, algorithms, extremism, AI. If we don't give kids something solid to stand on, they'll kneel to whatever's trending, and that's not a good thing. If you've listened to very many of my Dadograms in the past, you know I believe in the concept of leadership by example. And if you're a parent, you're the leader in your kids' world. So model it, speak it, celebrate it. I believe that kids should learn the pledge in school. They should know the national anthem, word for word. They should understand our founding documents. And it starts with us, parents. They're first and probably most important teachers. We lead by example. We explain, we model, we praise what's worth preserving. I think that's how I became such a patriot. When I was a boy in the 1970s, my great uncle Jack, a World War II veteran, used to hand out small American flag pins at every family reunion. That simple act, it stuck. It planted something deep in me and all of us kids. Patriotism runs deep in my family. My wife and I both served in the Navy. Others in our families chose the Army or the Air Force. And our family business? We literally help America celebrate its birthday each and every year. Our brand is sold in nearly every state. Grand Patriot and Little Patriot fireworks. Names inspired by those little flags from my great uncle Jack. That's the power of symbols. That's the power of tradition. That's the power of a simple pledge. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If the pledge was invented to create a strong shared foundation for a generation to stand upon and restore unity after the Civil War, and if the nation had to create a moral compass because the culture stopped providing one, then we should ask ourselves, what are we building now? And what will our kids be standing on during when the next crisis comes? The pledge isn't a relic, folks, it's a root, and it would be very wise of us all to water it. Thanks for listening to this Dadogram. Until next time, keep leading.